I wanted to introduce myself for those that don't know. I'm Brian Sullivan, the mayor, and I appreciate you all coming down to what's going to be an informal, formal meeting. And the reason I say that is I have asked, and the men and women to the left and right of me have offered to come and put together this meeting to answer some questions and to give some information to you in regards to the project that's going on in wells 7 and 8 on the north side. It will be informal in regards to how we are running it, but I would appreciate if we can run it as if we are running a formal meeting. I'm going to introduce people, have them talk, and then at the end we will take some time for some question and answers. Hopefully there'll be a few questions because we'll have answered those during the presentation. So if you can hold off asking until after, we'd appreciate that so we can get through our part and then take your questions. I do appreciate you coming in, and it's not easy to get and understand that what we have sitting up here now is the federal government, the state government, and the city government all looking at an issue together. And though some people don't believe it, it's three groups that are working very closely together in regards to this issue. So I want to thank everyone that's up here. Unfortunately, it looks like it's a council meeting. We were going to have it in 201, but quite honestly, there was enough people to move it into a bigger venue, and that's a good thing. So take what we have, take notes, ask questions. That's what we're here for. And at the end of this, hopefully you'll walk out of here with an understanding of what's going on, if you didn't understand it already. I would like to know, just for the record, so that because of the way things are in the world today, those people that are videotaping, if you can just raise your hand for us. Could you let me know your name and where you're from?
Hi, Brian from TV22.
Dan Alley from Westfield.
That's it for video? And how about audio?
Kristen Mello, there's a digital audio recorder on the podium.
Okay, and who has this?
Right here.
Oh, you got both?
Yes.
Channel 22, that's Counselor Alley trying to steal your job. I do actually want to thank, there's 5 counselors now in the room also. Counselor Dan Alley, President Brent Beans here, Counselor Miriam Babinski is here, Counselor John Beltrandi is in the room, I know what's here, over here, and Counselor Steve Donnelly is here also. I think I got you all. If not, we'll introduce you later. My job is just to facilitate. I'm not going to give you any of the statistics or the chemistry or anything else like that. So I'm going to turn it over immediately to the Department of Public Works, the Director, Dave Phillips, who will start with the city side. And just so you have a little idea how we'll do this, the city will talk first on some updates in regards to the wells themselves and the filtration units. Then the Air National Guard will speak on updates on theirs, and then the DEP will have a presentation and do their part at the end before we do questions. So, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to introduce Heather Miller. Heather is the systems engineer for the Department of Public Works. She's also a licensed PE. And just for the record, I also have college degrees in chemical engineering and physical chemistry. So we actually do know what we're doing. What I want to do is I just want to walk you through where we came from and where we are today and where we're going. And Heather will help me with that because she'll do more of the technical side of this. So what happened back in 2013, the EPA issued an interest of compound of interest basically for a molecule that they were going to start looking at. That's not uncommon. In 2013 or 2016, 3 years later, they actually issued a health advisory. We have 2 wells that were over those limits, but those wells were offline well before they issued that advisory. We have no other wells, nor have we ever had any wells or any part of our system that was over the limits. And it's really important to stress that, is that no water that were above these limits ever got into the system. And I know there's been some talk out there that there was something wrong with the water. I'm here to assure you that the water is 100% safe to drink. You know, we drink it also, so I won't want you to think that anyone's trying to put anything over on you. So what we did at the time is to return the 2 wells, which are 7 and 8 that are offline, we decided to pursue treatment. Well, it's a pretty long process. What we did is we contracted our geologist. We have a guy who works for us. He's actually a leader in his field. Came out, he did a little bit more testing. We got in touch with another contractor we use on a regular basis. They came out, and what we decided to do was do some bench scale testing, because they've done this in other parts of the country, and when they haven't done the testing, what you end up is your carbon filters, which is what we usually use to remove this stuff, they can become clogged, and then you have to backwash it, and it becomes a real cost issue with you. So what we've seen is, you know, the bench scale testing is going on right now, and Heather's kind of been in charge of that, so maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Sure. So the bench scale testing is basically where we took water directly from one of the wells that we're looking to filter. We sent it off to a lab, and what they will do is they'll run that water through samples of the material that we would be looking to use as a filter. So on a small scale, a bench scale, you know, sitting on a lab bench, they'll put water through that filter and see how well the carbon material that they're using pulls the chemicals out of that water. It'll also look at things like metals or other naturally occurring molecules that might be in that water will interact with that carbon. So for instance, if you had, as they have in some other areas, if you had a high load of other molecules fighting for those spots on the carbon, then it might be more difficult for the carbon to be pulling out the molecules we're looking at, which is these PFOA and PFOSs. So by running it through on a bench scale, we can take several different materials, see how they perform with our water, and then choose the best one and make sure that it's sized appropriately so that it will do the best job treating our water.
So that's where we're at right now. So what we're doing is we've done some site work. We're in the permitting process, and we're waiting for this bench scale testing to be done, which I would anticipate would be in the next month or so. And then we would have to size the vessels, basically order them, and build a plant. Now, we've got experience with carbon filtration because we have a plant on Shaker Road. So our operators, our treatment operators know how to run these plants. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add. I mean, that's really kind of where we're at. Again, the water is 100% safe. It's important to know the health advisory is a lifetime advisory.
The EPA's health advisory, what the guidance that they've issued with that is that they came up with a number that they're confident over a lifetime of consumption at that amount, there would be no health impacts for the most sensitive members of the population. That's how EPA has defined what this health advisory limit is. And they came out with this number of 70 parts per trillion as their health advisory limit for the amount that they believe there would be no health impacts at that level or below if a pregnant or nursing mother were to consume water for her lifetime at those levels. And as Dave mentioned, none of our sources that are online and none of our sources that have been online since before they even issued this health advisory have ever tested anywhere close to that 70 parts per trillion. So the water is not anywhere near what EPA has identified as their level of concern.
It's also important to note that we have a federal permit limits that we have to meet, and we've had no violations of that. We rarely have violations of that permit. We've had none since this whole situation came up. So.
I wanted to introduce other people that are here, just so you know, in the room. The director of our health, Joe Rouse, is here. Eric Bilowitz is in the back from the airport. And I have both Sue Phillips and Megan Bristol from the law department. But obviously, they've all been involved with everything that's going on, too, so that you can understand how widespread this is amongst ourselves. I'll turn it over to Colonel Sir from the Air National Guard. I want to first say thank you for the time and concern that you've given me, and the information you have is about the base.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. I'm Colonel Jim Sir. I'm the commander of the 104th Fighter Wing, Barnes Air National Guard Base. I brought with me my Director of Public Affairs, Lieutenant Colonel Brenda Hendrickson, and I've got my Director of my Environmental Programs on the base, Mr. John Richardson, here as well. I want to just start off by saying that we in the 104th Fighter Wing, we're absolutely dedicated to environmental protection. We live here, we drink the water, we're charged in our mission statement to defend and protect the community. And I think our award-winning environmental program, which I'm happy to talk more about if anyone who would like to, shows our commitment in that area. In addition, like the Mayor mentioned, we're working as partners with Mass DEP and with the City of Westfield. And I am 100% committed to transparency as we go through this process. I thought it would be helpful for everyone in the room. I've got less than 4 minutes, just a brief overview and a little bit of history of where this chemical was used on the base, and then really the 4-step federal process that I have to follow, and where we are timeline-wise in that process right now. So for the history, every Air Force base in the country, including every Air National Guard base, has used perfluorinated compounds, or PFCs, in their firefighting foam. In order to combat fires, they have jet fuel in them, or to contain a spill that has jet fuel. Okay. We've had the chemical on the base in our firefighting foam, in our fire trucks, and in our fire suppression systems, pressurized and ready to go in our aircraft hangars in case of an emergency since about 1970. So we've had the firefighting foam that contains PFC since about 1970, and during that time, the foam was used on the base and was discharged in support of flying operations. I can tell you that in 1987, we shut down our firefighter training area on the base. In other words, an area where we would practice using the foam. That was shut down in 1987. In the year 2000, as part of the installation and restoration program, we went back to that closed firefighter training site and removed 15,000 tons of soil from that site and properly disposed of it. As of March of this year, we no longer have any of the old firefighting foam on the base. So all of our trucks and systems have been triple flushed. All of the water that was used to flush them, all of the old foam with the PFCs in it is no longer on the base as of March of this year. We now have a new type of firefighting foam that's in our fire trucks that is a safer type of foam. In addition, we don't discharge the foam for training purposes anymore now. For my firefighters to get training to discharge foam, they actually have to travel to Florida or Georgia to a contained site to do that. So we would only discharge the new, safer foam on the base if there was an aircraft on fire or if there was a large aircraft fuel spill. So that's kind of the very, very short history of where we are, what we've had on the base since 1970, and where we are today. Now, like I mentioned a second ago, there's basically a 4-step process. It's being managed by the National Guard headquarters in Washington, D.C., and they're currently doing this process in over 80 Air National Guard bases across the country, and Barnes is one of those 80. And I'm bound by federal law to follow this process. I have to stay within the 4 steps I'm about to explain to you here. Step 1 in the process is called a preliminary assessment. You can think of that as interviews and historical research to basically go back and say, hey, were there release points on my Air National Guard base? We conducted that preliminary assessment during the calendar year of 2015, and the report was finalized in 2016, and there was enough information from that preliminary assessment to move on to step 2 and to continue the process. And like I told you, we've known we've had the foam on the base since 1970, and that preliminary assessment confirmed that and moves us on to what we're now beginning, which is step 2. It's called site investigation. You can think of it as the testing phase. So the purpose of this step is to confirm if there's PFCs in the water and in the soil around the base, and if so, to exactly define the size X, Y, and Z axis of where this is located in the groundwater and in the soil. I think it's another good example of partnership with the city and with Mass DEP. We actually were able to work with our federal level National Guard contractor, and they were able to give inputs on exactly where to put the sampling wells that we're about to start putting in this June. And again, this step will be to confirm the presence and define the exact location of where these chemicals exist. So I can tell you in early June of this summer, we're going to drill 5 monitoring wells on the Barnes International Guard Base, and we're going to go to approximately 12 other areas and take soil samples. And we're going to be looking for 6 different types of PFCs. The contractor that's conducting this through a federal contract. And 2 of those 6 are the ones that the city mentioned, PFOS and PFOA. So we expect that by hopefully August or September of this year, we'll have the data from the base sampling wells and the soil samples done, a report that has to be verified by our national headquarters in Washington, D.C., and then I'll be able to share those results with the Mass DEP and with the city of Westfield. They'll be able to combine our results from the base testing with the testing they're doing to get a full picture of what's going on the base and around the base. From that point, step 3 in the process would be remedial investigation. That would be a step of taking what, if any, is defined as the location and exact quantity of PFCs detected by our testing, and it would trace it back to known release areas and pathways and look for possible sources. For that part of the step, there's about eight contractors across the country, like I said, doing this at about 80 different National Guard bases. We will work closely with the National Guard headquarters to make sure that we quickly get assigned a contractor if and when we get to that step and press through with, again, step 3, which is remedial investigation. Finally, step 4 is called the feasibility study, and that's where, if required, you come up with the long-term methods to mitigate and remove any PFCs. An important part of step 3 and step 4 is in the federal contract that the National Guard is doing. It includes public hearings. So we'll be required by contract to continue to have public hearings as we tell you what we found from our testing and then what we found from our remedial investigation and what our plan is for the feasibility study or for the methods to remove any chemicals that are found. I know it's a very, very long process. Like I said, I'm bound to follow it, but we're dedicated to leadership at the base to work with the city and work with DEP to get it done as quickly as possible. I'd also like to say that there is ways in our contract with the federal government to start implementing fixes before you get to the end of the process, and we'll keep you updated on that as we go. Again, just a short overview of the process, the history from Lawrence, and I'd just like to close and say by saying that there's nothing more important to me than the men and women of 104 and taking care of their community where they live in the world. And I appreciate the time and look forward to the questions that you may ask. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Colonel. I appreciate that. Before I turn it over, just a couple other people that I wanted to recognize. Pat Carnevale is here from MEMA, and also Senator Don Humison and Rep. John Velas, who have been part of this. They aren't here. They are in Boston working on the budget and stuff, but both of them have been involved with these meetings also. And Mike Knappich from the governor's office has been involved with these since the inception too. So, like I said, the people that are involved reaches many spectrums, so I appreciate the opportunity to all get together and be able to introduce all that information to you. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to the, hope I get the title, Director of the Western Region, DEP, Mike Gorski, who will do the next presentation on their testing.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, and thank you for everybody for coming out. So with me, I have PublicForum, who's my deputy, and Cindy Jodowski, who's the section chief in our Great Wayside Cleanup. Eva's got a pretty brief presentation that we'd like to show you, and then we'll be ready to take some questions.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? I have a presentation, and I recognize some people may not be able to see it, but I will speak to everything that we have up here. We do have a large map that we brought that you can come and look at afterwards if you're interested in seeing some of what I'll be talking about. So basically, I want to give you, you've heard some of this already from the city and from the Guard, but I want to give you a brief background on PFCs and what our role is in this process right now, and it's to identify the private wells that are around the area that we're talking about. Our methodology in choosing the wells that we're going to sample in this first phase, and what we will do if we find PFCs at levels above the health advisory. I want to reiterate what everyone else here has been talking about tonight, is that this has been a collaborative effort between the city, Barnes Air National Guard, and Mass DEP, and I'm just going to give you a little more detail on what our role is in this. So quickly, we've heard a little about this. Perfluorinated chemicals, or PFCs, besides being used in foam, as Carl mentioned, are also widely used, have been widely used in other industries, in stain, water, and grease repellents, for carpet and fabric protection, food packaging, metal plating. So there have been a number of uses that PFCs have been used for, but also being a key component in the older firefighting foams. They're persistent in the environment and can be found in the groundwater if there were releases, and that's what we're looking at in this situation. How are they regulated? They're, as the city mentioned, emerging, what EPA calls emerging contaminants. There's no established limit yet. However, EPA set a health advisory last year of 70 parts per trillion for two of these compounds, PFOA and PFOS. Levels above the health advisory does not necessarily indicate that there are health risks. However, it's a screening value that the federal government set, and Massachusetts is acting on this advisory. So looking at the Barnes Aquifer, I have a map. It's a little hard to see. Like I said, if you want to look at this afterwards, we'd be happy to show it to you. The hydrogeology of the groundwater of the Barnes Aquifer is pretty well understood. The general flow direction is south. In terms of the identification of the wells, we looked at the hydrogeology of the aquifer, and then we looked at a 1 mile radius around the city wells where PFCs were found as a sort of first cut. We looked at a well drillers database. We worked with the city and looked at city records to try to identify all the public wells in the vicinity. And we've identified approximately 150 wells. This map shows where these wells are located. The majority of them are to the east and south of the area that we are focused on, approximate to the base. And again, the priority for looking at those, generally again, because groundwater flows south, the areas of immediate concern would be to the south and the sort of southeasterly wells. So in terms of our sampling methodology, we're implementing a phased approach. Our goal is to identify the extent of this if there is an issue with private wells. That's something we don't know yet. So we've chosen a representative number of wells to look at the extent and to look at concentrations. What are the concentrations? Are they of concern? The primary focus will be those down gradient wells, the ones that are in the flow path. But we also included areas north of the base just to make sure, and west of the base, just so we have all of the entire area covered. So the initial number of wells that we're looking at is 25. We've notified 25 residences of our intent to start this sampling. We have 11 that have responded, and we started scheduling, doing the testing. We're going to start going out Friday to look at those. We'll hopefully hear back from the remaining individuals that we haven't heard from yet. But the 25 are shown on this map, and as you can see, most of them are to the east and the south, but again, we covered every direction as a protective measure to see what we would find. So what do we do if we find levels that may be of concern? We are ready to provide bottled water to any of the residents that may have an issue. We are also prepared to install water treatment systems at these residences. And then we would work with the city and with the Air National Guard to talk about long-term solutions, like tying into the city public water supply, if that's an option. Once we get the results from these 25, we will then know whether or not we need to expand this and go on to the second phase of testing. Do we need to go beyond the 1 mile radius? Do we need to include more homes around a well that maybe had detections? So all of that will be determined, once we have the results of the first round. And, we're in communication with the homeowners, and we're prepared to share all these results with them as well as, with the public and our partners here once we get them.
Great.
Yeah.
Is there anything anyone up here wants to add that they thought of while we were on the explanation? I will say one thing in regards to the DEP and the notifications. If you do receive that, make sure you get the information back to them. That's just going to slow the process if they don't get that paperwork back, because they can't do anything until they get all that information to you. So help them help you by getting that information back to them as soon as you receive it.